Cam got hit.
Hey, what's going on, people? This is CJ here, back with another movie review. This time we're talking about the 2019 movie Hellboy, directed by Neil Marshall. This movie overall was actually alright. If you're the type of person going into this film, and it sucks too because the marketing for this film has been so much emphasis on the R rating. If there's a couple of things that stood out to me about this film, it's a handful of things. One, this film pretty much goes it how should I say? It does a good job of really capitalizing on its R rating because, dear God, this is a movie that you would not want to take your kids to. This is not a movie to take your kids to. It's very effective R rating, and not R rating in it's cussing. There's some cussing in it, but it's in that PG-13 realm, dialogue wise with the cussing and such. But what I mean by it makes effective use of its R rating, I'm talking more so the violence. I'm not the type of person that railroads against violence. Movies, depending on what it's at, you're going to get a certain level of violence. And this film, to me, it's the violence is hit and miss. And what I mean by that is, like I said, they make use of its R rating. You get heads getting blown off. You get people getting split in half. You get just decapitations. At one point, Hellboy is fighting giants who are eating people and killing them, and you hear the crunching the bones and all that stuff. And it's just like, wow, they really emphasize that a lot, and they really make use of it. And like I said, some of it's gratuitous and it works. Other times it just feels like it's being gratuitous for the sake of being gratuitous. Whether it's the splitting of people and it's like, do I really need to see that? Or just it's hit and miss on that. And like I said, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Two, what I like about this is that the movie really emphasizes Hellboy's relationship and how he's coming to terms with who he is as a person and stuff. This is a guy, David Harbour really does a good job of pretty much owning Hellboy as his own and not trying to be a Ron Perlman derivative. Like, he really plays Hellboy in the sense of like, hey, we're really getting Hellboy as a character. Now, Hellboy in this movie, he has a very sarcastic thing to it. And it's not to say that Ron Perlman's Hellboy didn't. Ron Perlman's Hellboy had a sarcastic nature to it and such, but it was played in a very subtle way that Ron Perlman is. David Harbour opts to go for the sarcastic Hellboy who has his funny moments and stuff, and he gets a little wacky and stuff, and just, and he's fun to watch. And I think that's probably the best thing going for it, because I think my worry was like, oh my God, how can David Harbour really top Ron Perlman? And what I liked about his characterization of Hellboy is that it stands alongside with Ron Perlman as a really good characterization of Hellboy. He can be wacky and funny when he wants to be. His reactions to certain things surrounding, whether it's when he's fighting the giants and just his monologuing and stuff when he's dealing with when he's fighting them and stuff, and just everything to it like he works and such, and even the makeup effects for it is I really love it and stuff. I think they did a really good job of it and such. Two, alongside what we're getting with David Harbour as Hellboy, I like that the film focused more so on it being more so of a character piece, and I think that was probably Neil's intentional intent from the jump, is to kind of make this film very personal and such, because it's really about Hellboy and his relationship with the people surrounding him, whether it's his relationship with his father, played by Ian McShane, Trevor, and stuff, and how their relationship is not like the typical father and son. Like, while Trevor is like Hellboy's surrogate father, adoptive father, you know, their relationship isn't like, oh, I hate you, Dad. It's more like, hey, you know, we didn't necessarily have a normal relationship, and Hellboy wishes that they had a father-son relationship, and then Trevor's like, well, hey, look, you know, yeah, I gave you a gun when you were 10 years old and stuff, but deep down, I love you. And you see that and such, and I think Hellboy, over the course of this movie, he comes to terms with really accepting Trevor for the father that he is and such. Whether it's with Alice, played by Sasha Lane, his relationship with her, it's a very sisterly relationship, brother-sister type relationship and stuff, because his history with her and how, you know, when she was kidnapped as a kid by a hog fairy and such, that ends up coming into forming in the story and stuff. But their relationship, you know, Alice and Hellboy, is really great. As, like I said, brother and sister, they got history, and it's actually pretty cool and very endearing, and I like that and such. And even Hellboy's relationship with Ben Damio, played by Daniel Day Kim. Very typical, like, I don't like you, you don't like me. And Ben has a bit of a secret that makes him a bit of a hypocrite, but you understand, like, why he has that animosity towards Hellboy. But typical thing that you watch in this movie, eventually over time, you know, he grows to kind of have, like, a very understanding relationship with them. But I think it's actually pretty dope and it's pretty cool. And I thought Daniel did a really fantastic job and such. There's a character, I think was in Grugach, played by Stephen Graham and Douglas Tate. I'm assuming Douglas Tate was probably the motion capture and Stephen was the voice, possibly, I'm guessing. But it kind of ties into the special effects of this film. Special effects, it's hit and miss. At times it's really good, other times it's very like, but overall, in the course of the movie, the CGI works for what it's doing, particularly with the monsters, and even some of the practical effects for the monster designs is actually pretty cool too. You know, for me, I'm a fan of the old Del Toro movies where, you know, everybody knows Del Toro is really fantastic when it comes to monster designs, but I enjoyed the world building that he did with the monster world itself and how they have interactions with the real world. And you get a piece of that, particularly with what I mentioned earlier about Hellboy fighting the giants and stuff. They are there are creatures that interact with the world and stuff, and they allude to that, but that whole fight with the giants really illustrates that. And I think for me, I wish that the movie really went in depth a little bit more in terms of, like, this world where monsters are still kind of prevailing and such. And it ties into my issue with Milla Jovovich's character, Nemu, the Blood Queen. She reminded me of Malekith from Thor: Dark World, where, you know, you get this backstory of who he is as a bad guy and stuff, and and Malekith was serviceable. It's the same thing with Nemu, you know, Milla Jovovich's Blood Queen. She's serviceable as a villain, but, like, you wish there was more to it and such. You know, you understand why she's dangerous, but again, you just wish there was more that they can get out of it and such. You know, they do all this, oh, she's the queen of the world, we gotta fear her. And yeah, you do fear her and what she does, but it's just, you just wish that she was way more than what you were given and such. And it's not to say that she doesn't get a lot to do with as the Blood Queen, far from it. In fact, she actually does a lot as the Blood Queen and showing her the effectiveness of her power and what she can do, and it's actually pretty great. But like I said, at the same time, you're kind of in that territory of not caring a little bit. So it's that's why I put the comparison between her and Malekith from Thor: Dark World, where they do a good job with the material as villains, but ultimately it's like it's lacking in a certain area of just, you want to see more and such as it keeps going and such. And that's, like I said, that's to the whole thing with this movie overall, why I say it's an alright movie. It's like I walked away from it enjoying it and such, but there were certain scenes that I felt were really good, and there were certain scenes that just didn't do it for me overall and such. But, you know, like I said, these things can be corrected in sequels, and you know, so everything about the special effects are alright and stuff. Like I said, hit and miss. Like I said, all the actors do a really fantastic job and stuff. They do set in stone the world building for this world, which I think is pretty dope. But yeah, it's I think if you separate thinking that this movie could be like the Del Toro movies, you'll be fine. I think if you go into it with that mentality of it could never match the Del Toro movies, it's going to hinder your enjoyment of this film. I know a lot of people like to use fun when it comes to, you know, movies and such, but I will say you will have fun with this movie and such. The pacing of the movie, like I said, it's hit and miss and stuff. There were times where I felt that the movie was meandering a little bit, but then it reached that, it meandered to the point to where it knew when to just stop meandering and continue on with the story. So your mileage will vary on that and such, but that was just my observation of what I noticed, because there were times where I'm just like, okay, can we get to the next scene? And it would linger for extra 2 minutes longer than what it needs to be, and then, you know, finally get to the next scene and such. But yeah, overall, this movie really was fine. It really came across as a very personal film. I definitely came away wanting to see more of what Neil can do for this world building and such. I would love to see Del Toro come back on the film in some sort of capacity too as well. But I think overall, this film did a pretty good job with Hellboy. I think you're going to come going into it as pretty much being surprised with how good this movie actually is versus what you saw in the advertisement. You're like, I don't care and stuff. But I think you're really going to go into this movie enjoying it for the most part, despite, you know, the hit and miss, despite the misses, some of the misses that this film has. So, yeah, I give this a 7 out of 10. I mean, go see it. You won't regret paying money for it. And with that in mind, catch you on the flip side. Peace out.
Phoebe.